Well, it's time for what will probably be the last 5 year bookmark in this save. A moment where we just stop off, take a breath, and have a look at the big news in the footballing world and particularly the English football pyramid. We are 15 years into this save, and at the 10-year mark, there had been a few surprises. So let's see what we've got 5 years further down the line and see if there are any big stories in this universe from the footballing world. Yes, hello and welcome along to part 132 of Saving Southend with me, Daniel. Today, on a rare occasion, there is not a focus on Southend United, but instead on the footballing world 15 years in. It's something I love to do every 5 years just to immerse myself in the football world, see what's changed, what the big stories are. You can see one in the Premier League, Chelsea are 14th, and see whether any clubs have moved multiple divisions, any have had surprising title successes and things like that. So if you're looking forward to it, as always, please do chuck a thumbs up on it. We also did our 5 and 10-year one in the head coach, so it's great to see how similar and different the two footballing worlds have been and how different every FM universe is. First, we'll start with our profile because it's the one thing we don't really cover during the Southend videos is to see what state we're in, and we are a very good manager now on over 100 grand a week with the best reputation despite only having a National A licence. That's pretty interesting. How have I got a bigger reputation than my club, despite not having a continental licence? Not quite sure on that one. Anyway, we play attacking football. We're known for leading teams to title wins, and we're on over 100k a week. It's not a bad little career we've got ourselves here, is it? For now, though, let's go and get the focus away from that. There's my attributes for those who asked to see it. Let's go and get our focus on the footballing world. We know what's been happening in the Premier League in recent years because we've become a little bit of a superstar there. And despite the fact we've had disappointment pretty much everywhere else, we have in the Premier League become dominant, albeit only by a point this year. If we start with the English Premier Division, and we'll do it actually from this profile screen so you can see the recent winners. We got our first one in 2035, and in 3 tight wins, we managed to pick up 4 in a row. The year before this, the 36-37 season, it's the only one that was really a doddle. Prior to that, it had been United at the start of the 5-year period, their first one since Sir Alex Ferguson left, 21 years prior. The Manchester United got back in the fold, but then Arne Slot went, and it's all fallen apart since then. We are getting to that stage now where the very last of the originals are moving on. We're starting to see which sides are recruiting better, which sides are overhauling their squad the best, and which side has got the best infrastructure. And at the moment, we've seen a resurgence of Newcastle, this year Brighton as well, and Sheffield United always up there as Everton have just started to drop off. I wouldn't say there's any massive surprises in the Premier League other than Southend United. Nottingham Forest have stayed in there and got comfortable now. Bristol City have stayed up from the Championship, but otherwise there's a lot of as you were's in there and names that wouldn't really shock you, such as Norwich, such as West Brom. You wouldn't be surprised to see them in the bottom half of the Prem. Let's move down to the Championship then and see how that compares, because in the Championship, Brentford have beaten West Ham in the playoff final. The top two, though, Wolves and Hull. That's a pretty tense finish at the top, wasn't it? Reading again have had a resurgence. They're up in the top 6 of the Championship. Just looking down the division for any big surprises. Watford relegated. Not going to complain about that. Wrexham in mid-table in the Championship. Never made it to the Prem, but have become quite consistent at this level. But again, otherwise, I wouldn't say there's any massive surprises in English football so far. I wonder if the third tier will be a little different to that. The top of it is Blackburn Pompey in the final. 2 sides in the Championship in real life this year. Stoke and Charlton are 2 that went up. Lincoln, our feeder club, in 7th, basically where they finished last season in real life. Tranmere in 9th. Dulwich Hamlet up in the top half of League One. They've managed to establish themselves as an EFL club. So last time we were here, they'd just been promoted to League Two, hadn't they? And they've now become a League One club and a fairly steady one as well. We've got Martin Patterson in charge, but their key player, yeah, he's okay. He's a decent striker. They've got a good little side. And it looks like Dulwich Hamlet are a side very much on the up. So be interesting to see at the end of this save if they manage to infiltrate the Championship or not. That's certainly the first big story we've seen so far. I'd argue there perhaps are a couple of others in League One as well. I know they've just gone back down there on 53 points, but Bury back in League One, you could argue where they belong. Oliver Lancashire, their manager, Let's have a look at their trajectory as well. Yeah, lots of promotions. So when we were last here, they were a side that was sort of floating at the top of the National League, and they've now moved right up the pyramid. So brilliant stuff from them. There's also Altrincham in the middle of League One. They're fairly settled at that level as well. No real shocks going the other way. We've not seen clubs fall in 3 or 4 divisions, but we've certainly seen a few coming up. I wonder if there's going to be any surprise teams right down the bottom of the pyramid. In League Two, it is Peterborough who are returning to League One. Accrington, York going back up to League One, and Stockport at the top. Further down that division, you've got Barnsley mid-table in League Two. Maybe a bit of a surprise. Gloucester are in there. They're a side that have had a little bit of a rise as well. Let's have a look at them. So they started, where were we? In the regional divisions in 23-24, struggling in the north. Pretty average for 5 years. Then suddenly, after a little spell of floating between the regionals and the National League, they just had this weird spell the last 5 years. They've become a solid League Two club now. Just wanted to have a look at Barnsley on the flip side of that. How have they been getting on? Wow, it's been a sudden decline, hasn't it? They've been top half of League One for a long time, then just one awful season, and they've not been able to get in the top 7 of League Two the last 2 years, which is a shame for them. Just looking at the bottom of the division, there's a first big surprise. Blackpool dropping out of the EFL. Now, how have they got on? They're semi-pro. What? But the league hasn't even flipped over yet. They must have reverted immediately because you can't be semi-pro in League Two. So unless that's just flipped the last few days. Let's have a little look at them. Wow, what a decline that is. So when we were last here for a review, they just had a double relegation from the Championship and League One. They then went straight back up as champions, survived very narrowly the year after, but then went down to League Two, struggled the first season, and have now gone down again. Based on the fact they've immediately gone semi-pro, it must be financial problems. I can't see how else they would be in that position. Their finances just behind my head are insecure, but that is a club that has had a meteoric fall. The first one we've seen that from in this save. A couple of other clubs on the rise. I didn't mention Yeovil. Yes, they've been a League Two club before, but they start this save in the south, so a good effort from them too. Blackpool, the first shocking one on the way down. What about the Vanarama National League? Stevenage dropped 2 divisions. They lose to Blyth in the final, who will be joining Shrewsbury in the Football League. Oh, right, this is where we start to see some surprises. So loads of VFL clubs here. Shrewsbury started in League One. Port Vale did as well. Stevenage did as well. Then starting in League Two, we had Doncaster. We had Gillingham. They're in the bottom half there. Crewe nearly getting relegated. They started in League Two. Crawley the same. The two sides in the League Two playoff final in real life, battling at the bottom of the National League here. And we've also got Morecambe, who went down from League Two and now from the National League as well. Lewis O'Brien, their manager, the former Forest and Huddersfield man. Let's have a look at the general news for them. Yeah, pretty meteoric fall from them as well. They'd had a double relegation just before our last one. They didn't get out of the top half of the National League. And then they went down, they went back up, and they went down again. And now they're going to have to do the job in the 6th tier for the second time during this career. So a few surprise teams out of the EFL. I'm just looking if there's any little tiny clubs that have come up here. I know that there's a few teams that will be a surprise. Blyth, South Shields at the top of the National League, both good efforts, but nothing incredibly stand out. Let's have a look at the North and South. Where are the big stories coming from, people? There they are. Fleetwood have just won the National League North. They flew up the divisions in real life and they've tumbled back down them in this FM save. They've gone down fairly slowly in fairness, flitting between League 1 and 2 the first 10 years. I mean, when we came back for the last review, they'd finished 4th in League 2 and just been in the playoffs. The 5 years after that, again, it's a lot of the double relegations in this save, isn't it? Gradually dropped down League 2. They're still professional as well. They finished bottom of League 2 2 years ago. Then finished bottom of the National League the very next season. What on earth happened there to cause that? They only lost 1 player and didn't have a mass departure. So that is a very surprising bit of news. I don't know what's going up in that part of the world. Blackpool and Fleetwood, the 2 clubs collapsing. Macclesfield going back into the National League the other way. Who else have we got down there? Scunthorpe still stuck in mid-table at that level. Nothing at the bottom that really screams out to me. But certainly a surprise to see Fleetwood and Blackpool both drop in multiple divisions. Let's go and get down to the south. Normally the weaker division of the two. Sutton have won it. They started in EFL, but obviously got relegated to the National League in real life last year. Cheltenham Town started in League One into the National League North. What's going on here? Another double relegation. What is it with the double relegations? It seems to be every other team. They went down from League 2, came straight back up in 2030. Then we left them here, 18th in League 2. The year after, they finished bottom of League 2. Then they got relegated from the National League. And they've been mid-table in the South ever since. Their finances are okay. They're professional. Their reputation's all right. But their media predictions 10th. They've just seemed to have settled as an average non-league side. It's an incredibly odd structure they've got. Got one of the lower wage bills at that level as well. There's a lot about that one that doesn't make sense. It doesn't seem to be financial issues. It doesn't seem to be they've had to revert to semi-pro. They've just got stuck and become average. Looking towards the bottom of that division, Wealdstone started in the National League, but they're one of the smaller clubs at that level. So I wouldn't say there's any great surprises going down. But yes, we have found a few surprise teams at the bottom end of the pyramid, haven't we? Didn't expect to see some of those names down there. Cheltenham, Fleetwood and Blackpool all dropping multiple divisions. Let's go and get through to the FA Cup. See who's been winning the Cups. We won one, obviously, at the start of the last 5-year cycle with Southend. Lost the final this time to Newcastle, who go back-to-back. United and Arsenal in between. It's pretty much all the big boys, isn't it? Let's go and have a look at the League Cup. The one that has eluded us so far. Liverpool have won it 4 in a row. Didn't realise that. Of course, they had a great success against us this year because of that stupid Ivo Torres back pass. It's actually just not left Merseyside, has it? 4 in a row for Liverpool, 2 in a row for Everton under Pochettino prior to that. And that is since the last 5-year review. Been dominated by the Scouts clubs. Let's move down to the Community Shield. 3 in a row for us after 3 in a row for United. But no one really cares about that competition, do they? The EFL trophy by comparison. A win for Lincoln, our feeder club, Pompey, Northampton, Charlton, and an under-21 side. Just the second ones to win it, Manchester City's under-21s. And the FA Trophy in non-league. A few AFL clubs winning it, Harrogate, Swindon, etc. But otherwise, I wouldn't say there's many great surprises. Bury got one on their way up. And Ebbsfleet, despite being bottom of the National League, got one. Not a bad effort from them. With England out the way though, let's move on to the Cinch Premiership in Scotland because you can see the holders there. I can see the holders there. I think we've got ourselves a mega surprise because Hibernian are the SPL champions. They won it by 5 points from Rangers, who had won 3 in a row prior to that. I mean, I don't know what it is in this save. Every other one this year, whether it's the Aberdeen Twitch save, whether it was the head coach save, Rangers dropped off a cliff and Celtic were dominant. Here, Rangers won the first, 6? Celtic had a little spell in the middle. Rangers then had another spell, but it is Hibs that have broken the dominance this year, and I want to know all about it. Stephen McManus, the man in charge. How does their side look? Very good. They've got players on big money. They've got some high-quality players in the squad. But should it be a side that's... all right, maybe okay. I was going to say, should it be a side that's beaten Rangers or Celtic? But this side looks pretty good on paper. Let's have a look at where they were before. Have they been second or third a few times? Right, okay. So prior to last year, they were second the year before. Yes, they had a year in fourth, but then it was third, second, third, second. They've been up there for 10 years now. So is it Celtic who have just become a bit of a struggling force? Greg Berhalter in charge. A few of the US fans might say that's the reason. Let's have a look at them. Oh, wow. Yeah, they've had a third. They've had another third there, another third this year. Quite a lot of seconds, but it's generally been them to drop out when Hibs have made it in. And they're predicted to be first, so they've got the best squad on paper, yet they're finishing in third place. That's very interesting. I feel like there might be a manager sacking there, unless he's a brand new one. He's been there for 8 years. I'm sorry. You've been there 8 years. You've finished third twice in a row. Yes, he's won the Scottish Cup this year. Yes, he won the League Cup as well, the Cup double. You are not getting away with finishing third as Celtic manager 2 years in a row. You're not getting away with it once, let alone twice. Greg Berhalter, the luckiest man alive when it comes to his job security. Let's go and have a look at the Championship, see if there's any more shocks. But that certainly is a surprise. I wonder if Hibs can keep it up. We'll have to keep an eye on that. Oh, Arbroath for 5th in the SPL. I was about to say no other surprises. They're 5th. Go on, our bro. Darren Ferguson's in charge. They've been in the SPL now since 2029, coming up to the 10-year mark, and their first run into Europe. Great effort from them. Let's go down to the Championship. Are there any surprise names? St Mirren up, Hearts up. Yeah, we've got a couple in there. Hearts in the Championship, winning the league. Hamilton going back down to League One again. Such a shame. The legends of our FM09 save. Let's move down to Scottish League One, where we have got a league table that looks like this. Not huge shocks. Partick and Ayr in the bottom half of League One. Raith Rovers, usually a side that got up to the SPL, not managing it in this save. And then in League Two, have we got anyone else that stands out? Brechin are League Two champions. Go on, Brechin. The legends of our FM21 save. They found their way into League Two. They did have a brief year in League One a few years back. They've established themselves. They've become a league side again. And now they're moving into the third tier. Brilliant work from them. Inverurie Locos in the league as well. And Fraserburgh as well, both in the bottom half. But good to see new teams in the SPFL. Let's have a look at the Scottish Cup. We saw that Celtic had won a couple, but our both got one in 2034. So not their first foray into Europe, just their first one via the league. Our Twitch side, Aberdeen, got a couple as well. Hopefully we'll be able to have that sort of success with them in that save. Motherwell picked one up just before the last 5-year review. But Celtic have actually been far better than Rangers in the Cup. They've just not been able to do it consistently in the league season. What about in the League Cup? Again, more Celtic than Rangers. One for our broth there as well. Dundee have picked one up. Hibs got one a few years back. But the last few years in the Cups, it's been all Celtic. But Rangers winning the SPL. We'll go down to my favourite competition as well, the SPFL Trust Trophy, where it is non-Scottish dominance in the last few years. 3 in a row for non-Scottish sides, 2 for TNS, 1 for Larne. TNS, to be fair, they normally become quite a good side in these saves. The rest of it, though, had been all Scotland prior to that, back all the way to 2026. So 10 years of Scottish winners, followed by 3 in a row from other nations. Something that, unfortunately, we're not going to see now in future years. Let's go and move on to Wales while we're speaking of TNS. I would assume, yes, they are dominant largely, but there is one break in the dominance, and that is for Carmarthen. But what a shame, because they won it in 2037, and they followed it up with a 7th place finish and haven't made Europe. And that's always the problem in these saves. 1 year out, and then they just fall apart. I wonder if they did anything in Europe when they got in. Oh, they made the conference group stage. That's even worse, because now the coefficient's going to get spread apart. It's the problem we had back in that banger save. A team would get into Europe, they do really well, and then they drop out and not get into Europe for 5 years. And no one really built up in that coefficient. That's a little bit of a shame. Lantwick Major up in the top half, a good talking point as well. But yeah, disappointing that, because it could have been a changing moment for that league. Unfortunately, it's not to be. Let's go over to Northern Ireland as well. We'll just click on Larne. It's the easiest way. They are, I would assume, yep, the dominant force in Northern Ireland. Linfield picked one up in the middle of that as well. Coleraine and Glentoran, the usual suspects up there. To be honest, I wouldn't say there's any absolutely blinding shocks in that division. It's very much the usual suspects in the top 4 or 5. And then even Crusaders, Carrick, Ballymena, Glenavon, your usual suspects in the division. The final things to do then are to move over to Europe and also, of course, to have a look at the international honours. So let's start with the Champions League, where we had our first final and defeat this year. Real Madrid continue to build on their success as the most dominant side in European history, making it 2 wins in 3 seasons. This one against us in the final via heartbreak. Liverpool did add 1 English name to the trophy, England's most successful side, whereas Atletico Madrid and Paris Saint-Germain, the other 2 to pick up the honours. So not many English winners. Often an accusation when you only have the big leagues loaded that the English league becomes dominant in Europe. Certainly not the case here in the Champions League. But then we've not really had consistent teams at the top. Other than us the last 4 years, there's been a lot of turnaround at the top of the English table. A lot of clubs that will finish first and then drift down to 7th or 8th. Maybe that's the explanation for it. As we move on to the Europa League, where it has been much more dominated by the English sides. At the last bookmark, we had just won our first major trophy, which was the Europa League. That is a run of how many English sides in a row? Wow, since 2026, it has been won every year by an English team. The English dominance has made it to the Europa League. Arsenal, Villa, Newcastle, City and United. In fact, That is 7 different English winners in succession. That's a pretty interesting stat, that, and just shows that it's different teams getting into the Champions League each year and different ones that are finishing a bit lower. Let's move on to the Conference League and see if it's the same. A little bit. The last 2 years have been Bilbao and Lazio. Prior to that, it was 4 English winners in a row. We obviously had the shock of Aberdeen about 7 or 8 years ago, which they didn't take advantage of domestically. But Arsenal, Aston Villa, Everton under Pochettino at the time, and Sheffield United all picked up the crown in Europe's 3rd competition. But Bilbao and Lazio have ended the English dominance there. In a Super Cup, a few of the English sides have won, but to be fair, Real Madrid having a go, Barcelona, PSG. The last 5 years have not been as dominant as the 5 prior. So club football at the very top table, still dominated by the traditional big boys in the Europa League, is very much a case of if you're English, you've got a chance of winning it. Let's finish off though with the international competitions, and we will start with the World Cup, the big one. Well, the European dominance continues. This is a trophy that is going on at the moment, and France are already flying, so wouldn't be surprised to see them win it again. They've won 3 of the last 5, including 2 of the last 3, and the only one we've had since our last 5-year review. France picked it up in 2034. Can we go and find that World Cup and see who got on well and if there were any surprises? Because, if I remember rightly, we had one where Ireland were brilliant and got to the final, weren't they? Either a Euros or a World Cup. So 2034, France beat Portugal in the final. Still a couple of the originals in there, Gusto and Camavinga, as well as the centre-half we just missed out on as a free agent to Arsenal. We'll probably make them quite strong next year. Brazil beat USA in the 3rd place playoff. Okay, that's an interesting match. And then going back to the quarters, you've got the Netherlands, you've got Italy, you've got Uruguay and Spain. I wouldn't say there's any surprises there with the big boys. Just going back to see if England were in the 16s. No, they weren't, but Ireland were. Scotland, I think, got as far as England, as did Northern Ireland. Yep, they all went out at the same stage. Pretty worrying signs for England there. Let's go and have a look at the Euros to polish off, where we have surprise holders at last. Norway beat France in the final in 2036, right at the end of Haaland and Ødegaard and all of that lot. They just about snuck a trophy and obviously continue to bring through good players because they beat the world champions in the final. What about prior to that? They beat Belgium in the semis, Germany lost the host nation. Northern Ireland made the quarters there as well. And Wales did as well. Italy did, and Switzerland. So Northern Ireland and Wales got further than England in this one as well. England went out to Belgium in the 16s. But Northern Ireland, Ireland and Wales all looking pretty good sides, to be fair. And England maybe not even the best in the UK anymore. That is a surprise to say the least. Let's have a look at the Nations League to see how that compares. France very much the dominant force here as well. Won 2 of the last 4. Italy and Spain the latest holders this year. But otherwise, no real sign of England being anywhere near. Back to the early 2010s, I think, when it comes to English football. So that is how the football pyramid looks at the moment. What surprises did I miss? What shocked you most? And how do you think it's going to look at the end of this save? Let me know down in the comments below if there's anything key I missed. Let me know what you would find the most surprising here. Is it Norway winning the Euros? Is it the big drop in divisions from some of the English sides? Or is it Hibs finally breaking the old firm dominance in the SPL? Let me know your thoughts on that down in the comments. If you like this little recap and bookmark, please do chuck a thumbs up on it. Subscribe and turn that notification bell on to stay up to date with everything, including our return with a Season 16 transfer special in 2 days' time. I warn you, there's a big English sign-in and there's another couple coming in the door as well. I think there might be 1 or 2 more departures too. Between now and then, though, we've got a huge video tomorrow as we continue our first season at a new club in the coach's head. You can find that current season and the playlist up in the eye above. There's also links there to the Twitch channel and a football podcast with loads of content for the new football season. So come and check it out if you haven't done previously. And I'll see you back here in a couple of days' time for a summer transfer special and Season 16 as Southend United. Will it be the one we finally win one of the 2 trophies that elude us? There is still no Carabao Cup or Champions League trophy in the cabinet, and at least one of those has got to change next year. Can we do it? I'll see you there to find out.